Hello, and welcome to the Divorce Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Divorce Women's Guide podcast. How are you today? I am so thrilled to be joining you guys today to talk a little bit about co-parenting. And the reason that I chose this topic for this week is because I know that so many of us, as we are still navigating a pandemic and our parenting schedules perhaps are coming back into a more quote unquote normal place after the holidays, I wanted to address this topic today and to talk to you guys a little bit about what co-parenting means, some of the ways in which you get to create a more successful co-parenting relationship, and so many other things. So let's just dive right in. So listen, parenting in and of itself is challenging enough, right? And when you add divorce on top of it, you are creating a whole other level of exhaustion, frustration, and even stress in your life, because you're not two people parenting in the same house. You're now co-parenting in separate households with your ex. And so many of us have so many concerns around our ex's parenting abilities, decisions that they're making, perhaps that there's some financial stresses that you're also dealing with. And how many of you guys feel worn down by sometimes the day-to-day conflict, or perhaps it's weekly conflict. And perhaps you're still in a mindset where you don't think you're going to be able to overcome all the resentments that you have from your marriage. And when we have to make shared decisions, when we have to interact with one another, potentially at every drop-off, or even just having to communicate with the other person is draining. And I'm sure many of you wish that you didn't have to do a lot of those things. And at the same time, they feel so impossible. And I'm here to say that for the sake of your kids' well-being, it is really important for you all to learn how to start overcoming your co-parenting challenges so that you can develop a cordial working relationship with your ex. And a lot of this, to me, has to do with the way in which you create boundaries for yourself and how it is that you communicate them with your ex through how it is that you co-parent. So, as many of you know, I'm a huge proponent of definitions. So what does co-parenting mean? Let's start there. And to me, what it really means is ensuring and having both parents playing a role in their kids' daily lives. And co-parenting, okay, which parallel parenting is actually one way to co-parent, is the best way to truly ensure that your kids' needs are met and really to enable them to retain as good of a relationship with both parents. And the quality of the relationship between co-parents also has, and many of you know this, it has a really strong influence on the mental and emotional well-being of your kids, right? And when you aren't getting along, your kids feel that, and it creates tension within themselves that is uncomfortable. And so I want this podcast to be sort of a wake-up call, maybe just a light bulb being turned back on, to encourage you to put aside your issues with your ex and agree to co-parent as amicably and agreeably as possible. And listen, I know that sometimes that is so much easier said than done, right? You know each other better than anybody else. You know what each other's triggers are. And I'm here to ask you to try to put that aside, okay? Even though I know that when you have some type of a joint custody arrangement, it is exhausting. It can be very infuriating. It can be stressful, right? And on top of it all, I know that so many of us have concerns over our ex's parenting abilities, right? For example, the other night, my son called me and started complaining to me about something that was a rule that his dad and his wife were putting into their house. And he got really frustrated and, it felt like he was almost baiting me, trying to get me to call his dad and to make some changes. And unfortunately, I guess his plan backfired because I really supported my ex-husband's decision to make that rule in his house because it's not a place that I have any control over. And he gets to make that decision based on what is in the best interest of his family and the rules that are over there. And so what I did was I put my son in the center of that decision making, and it didn't take power away from the rules that my ex-husband had created in his house. And I know that all of you have the power. I believe that all of you have the power to stand in that same place and create that type of a cordial relationship. So as I'm walking you guys through this, I'm going to encourage you guys to just keep in mind that the co-parenting interaction gets to stay calm. You get to stay consistent in how it is that you're showing up as a parent with the rules that you have in your house, right? And you also get to come to the table to resolve conflicts, to make your joint custody arrangement work. And ultimately, it should be intended to enable your kids to have the best, most thriving life possible. Okay. And I believe that the key to successful co-parenting is really to start separating your personal relationship with your ex from your co-parenting relationship. So I'm going to say that again. You get to separate your personal relationship with your ex from the co-parenting relationship, right? Instead of looking at it as your former spouse, you get to look at them as the father or the mother of your children, right? So you see them as the other parent, right? Father of the kids or mother of the kids. So I encourage you to start shifting this mindset, right? And to start thinking of your relationship with your ex as one that is completely new, right? And one that is predicated on the well-being of your children instead of it being about the two of you. Now, your marriage may be over, right? But your family is not. Your family looks different, but you're still a family. And as that family unit, you get to act in your kids' best interests because I know that that is your priority. I know and trust that. And the first step to being a mature and responsible co-parent is to put your kids' needs ahead of your own, right? In other words, as I said earlier, putting them in the center versus in the middle. And so through that co-parenting relationship, your kids get to recognize, right, through your actions, through your words, that they are the most important piece of the relationship between you and your ex instead of the conflict that ended your marriage, right? And that teaches them, you guys, that your love for them will prevail and always come first despite changing circumstances. So I'm sure some of you are like, okay, Wendy, how the heck do I get there? Well, get your pen out or start taking mental notes because I'm going to give you guys some tips. Okay. Tip number one is to start to learn how to set aside your anger and your hurt. Okay. Successful co-parenting means that your own emotions, right? Your own resentment, your own anger, your own hurt, your own sadness must take a back seat to the needs of your kids. Okay. And I know how hard that can be. Okay. I lived through it myself. And I know that it is hard to put those aside when you're trying to work cooperatively with your ex. But it is the most vital tip I can give you guys, right? Because at the end of the day, co-parenting is not about your feelings or those of your ex-spouse. It's about your kids' happiness, their stability, their future well-being, their consistency, right? So you get to separate your feelings from your behavior. And listen, I'm not saying that you don't have a right to feel angry or hurt, or that you're not right for having those feelings. You get to feel whatever it is that comes up. But what I'm saying is that they don't get to dictate your behavior, right? Because when you allow them to dictate your behavior, you're not putting your kids first. You're not doing what's in their best interest, right? So instead, okay, let's allow what's best for your kids, which is the two of you working cooperatively, motivate your actions, right? And you get to use another outlet to get your feelings out, right? Don't vent to your kids, right? That's what I do with my clients, right? That's what our friends are for, therapists. I mean, I have an emotional support dog. I talk to Max, my mini Bernedoodle, all the time. He and I have conversations. I cry to him. And also exercise, right? Exercise is a great outlet to let off steam. I love exercising to get out what is like fuel that I feel, is clogging me inside, right? And it enables me to stay kid focused. Hey, it's Wendy here. I wanted to take a quick break from the conversation to let you know about another free event I'm hosting on Tuesday, September 29th about divorce and narcissism. If you're somebody who is divorcing a narcissist or someone with narcissistic characteristics, this is something you don't want to miss. You will learn what you need to know before you divorce a narcissist, how to successfully negotiate with one, learn financial hacks, how to set boundaries and co-parent with a narcissist, and so much more. The event is free and it's live, and all you have to do is register today by visiting divorceandnarcissism.com. Again, the event is live on Tuesday, September 29th, so block your calendar today. And now let's jump back into the conversation. So if you are feeling angry or resentful or hurt or sad, try to remember, please, why it is that you get to act with grace and purpose, because your kids' best interests are at stake. Okay. Here's another tip, you guys. Like, if things start feeling overwhelming, my kids are my screensaver. So I actually look at my phone sometimes to help remind me and to calm me down. I also breathe. Breathing is super, super simple and super, super effective, right? To keep yourself grounded, right? And to help you to separate what's coming up from how it is that you're choosing to co-parent, right? And resolve to keep your issues with your ex away from your kids, right? Don't use them as messengers, you guys. I hear people do this all the time, and it breaks my heart, because when you're using your kids to convey messages to your co-parent, what you're doing is you're putting them in the center of your relationship and your conflict, right? Versus your goal is the exact opposite. It's to keep them out of it, right? So you get to communicate directly with your ex instead. And when you do that, you get to keep your issues to yourself, right? You get to allow your child to have and create a relationship with their other parent that has nothing to do with your influence. I can't stress that enough. And you guys, if your co-parent has characteristics that you are terrified that they're going to manifest with your kids, I understand. I have been there, and it is a huge teaching moment for you to be able to be there, to be that emotional support to your kids and helping them to navigate that road instead of you running to try to fix it all the time. It doesn't help your kids. It doesn't help your relationship with your ex. So again, please keep your kids in the center and keep your emotions out of it. Okay. Tip number 2 is learning how to be a better communicator with your co-parent, right? And to me, this is what your mindset has everything to do with, right? It starts with your mindset. So being peaceful, being consistent, and having purposeful communication with your ex is truly essential to the success in being a great co-parent, right? And I know some days it feels totally impossible. And I'm sure that thinking about communicating with your ex is not always our favorite thing to do. And perhaps you get to come up with new ways that you communicate. There was a stretch where my ex and I didn't text. We only communicated via email because that was what was in the best interest of my children. Because let's be real, guys, text messaging can definitely have really awful tones. And when you're bringing emotion into that conversation, you are at an all-time high. So what I always used to do, and I want to impart my wisdom to you all, is before you go into a communication correspondence with your ex, ask yourself this question first, right? How is it that your actions, right? What it is that you're about to say is going to affect your child, right? And make a conscious effort to conduct yourself with integrity and dignity, right? So imagine that when you are communicating with your ex, that your kid is sitting right next to you, right? Or perhaps they're listening, reading over your shoulder, right? Make them the focal point of every discussion that you have with your ex-spouse. And remember, you guys, it isn't always necessary to have to talk in person or talk via text or talk on the phone. Whatever means of communication is best for you is the way in which you get to set your boundary and allow that to be your means of communication. Well, why? Because your goal is to ensure that there is as little conflict and emotion in that communication as possible. So if email is the ticket for you, you guys go ahead and just choose if he texts you or she texts you and you want to respond via email, do it that way. You don't have to always give in to the means of communication that they're choosing to use with you. You get to stand in your power and use the type of contact that works best for you, right? And however it is that you choose to have contact, right, you get to still maintain effective communication. So what I always impart with my clients and the way in which I also interact with my ex-husband is I approach the relationship as though it's a business partnership. And I don't mean to make family business, but I write and speak to him as I would a colleague, right? So what does that mean? It means that I write to him cordially. I provide, self-respect, and there's neutrality. I don't put polarity on our communication. And I speak and write slowly. I take my time, right? I also make requests instead of pointing a finger and making statements, because sometimes those can be misinterpreted as demands. So I encourage you to try to frame things as requests. Requests can begin with statements like, would you be willing to, or are you open to trying it this way? Does that make sense? So making requests are gentler. You don't put the other person on the defensive immediately. Number 3 in effective communication is listening, guys. Listening, right? Communicating with maturity starts with listening. Even if you don't agree with the other parent, you get to convey, hey, I hear your point of view and I happen to have a different one. So either we have to agree to disagree, or perhaps you're open to hearing my point of view, right? Listening, you guys, does not mean that you agree or that you approve of what it is that they're saying. So you're not going to lose anything by allowing your ex to voice his or her opinions. Okay, that's a really important one. Another one is keeping your conversations kid focused. Don't let a discussion with your ex digress into a conversation about what you need or what it is that they need. You get to bring it back to the center and have it be about your kids, right? And in order to do that, you get to start showing some restraint, right? Train yourself to not overreact. And over time, you will stop allowing them to push your buttons. You have the choice. You have the control to not overreact when they're communicating with you. And then tip number 3, you guys, is to co-parent as a true team, okay? Parenting is full of decision-making that you're gonna have to make with your ex, whether you like each other or not, okay? And cooperating and communicating without blowups and bickering makes decision-making way easier. I know that sometimes you're like, oh, but it's going to feel so good to just nail him, right? To just like, I'm going to like cut him down with one line. Well, all it does is escalate and it's going to cause more problems. So what I would love to encourage you to do is to aim for consistency, right? To aim for teamwork, to aim for being a good co-parent and ensuring that you are also co-parenting with consistency. It is totally and completely healthy, you guys, for your kids to be exposed to different perspectives, different ways in which they shift their ways of being when they're in different households. It teaches them how to be flexible, okay? But they also need to know what the expectations are in each home and know that that is the way that they get to be when they transition from one home to the next. So aiming for consistency in your own home will enable your kids to know the rules, what discipline, what consequences are, what the schedules are, right? In each of your homes. They don't have to be the same, okay? What I always encourage my clients to do is maybe, if it's possible, to create general consistent guidelines, right? So my ex-husband and I have rules around video game time. His rules are very different than mine, but we agree that we are setting rules around the amount of time our kids are gaming. We also coordinate around discipline. We happen to communicate and we engage one another when discipline gets to happen with our kids. So sometimes we do that, or one of the big reasons why we do that is because a lot of times the discipline is going to cross households. So my ex needs to know the discipline that I'm providing my kids because it gets to continue when they get to his house and vice versa, right? I also have my own schedule. My ex and I have similar schedules. He's in a very different position with his life than I am. And as a result, we try to be as consistent as we can in terms of, when meal times are, when homework gets done, right around when bedtime is supposed to happen, right? To just ensure that our kids, their lives are similar, but they know what the rules are in each of our homes. And we get to be open and honest and straightforward about issues that are critical to our relationship, right? And it only helps the other parent. It's not a matter of you doing stuff for them, but it's a matter of just letting them know, hey, this is what's going on in my house. My ex-husband told me about some rules about the video games that my son calls me about almost every single day to complain about. And I stand behind their dad. And I say, you know what, if you have an issue with this, you got to talk to dad, but this is what dad's rules are. And you've got to learn to accept that, right? So when you guys are having, not every relationship, let's just say, not every decision-making, event that you have is going to be the same. And there definitely are going to be times where you're going to have disagreements. And there's ways in which I recommend resolving those disagreements. So, you're not going to see eye to eye on everything. It's just the way of the world. And what I'm asking you guys to hear me out on with what I'm about to say is just to keep this in mind as you guys are trying to navigate disagreements. Okay. First and foremost, show respect, treat the other person the way that you want to be treated. So be considerate, be respectful, and be flexible when and if possible. So respect also involves listening. It involves hearing them, giving them the opportunity to express themselves. The other thing is that you also get to continue to engage in a dialogue if you disagree about something, but I encourage you to not do it when you are in front of your children. And if it is something that's really important that you can't agree on, instead of beating a dead horse, why don't you guys just engage with a third party? Have somebody else come in and help you to navigate the disagreement. I've done that with my best friend, and it has worked wonders because she's neutral and she helps us to hear what the other is saying. Okay. And here's the other thing, you guys, don't sweat the small stuff. Pick your battles wisely. If your child, right, is being told that they have to go to bed at 8 o'clock at your house, but your ex chooses 8:30, 9 o'clock, you guys, come on, pick and choose your battles. Let the bedtime be 30 minutes later. It's really not the end of the world, because at the end of the day, compromise is going to come around, right? You're going to compromise on their point of view, and at some point they're going to compromise on yours, right? It may not be your first choice, but it allows you both, when you compromise, right? There's no winners or losers, but it allows you both to feel accomplished and to be and learn how to become more flexible in the future. So guys, at the end of the day, right, no matter what, co-parenting will not be without its share of difficulty. That's just the way it is. And it just simply comes with the territory of divorce. However, I'm hoping that what I shared with you guys today will allow your co-parenting relationship to be just a little bit easier. And when you approach it with an attitude of flexibility and cooperation and respect and willingness to communicate openly, you guys will work together as really amazing co-parents by putting your kids' interests first, which means putting them in the center. And doing so, I promise you guys, it is so worth the effort to every single person involved. Most importantly, your kids. They will recognize it. They will see it. They will appreciate it. It will make everybody's lives easier. So I hope you guys enjoyed my podcast episode today. I really loved sharing with you some of my tips, some examples from my own experiences. I love hearing your feedback, and I encourage you guys to continue writing me and sharing it with me. I hope that you also got some really great nuggets of information that enabled you to navigate your process wherever it is that you are a little bit more easily. Sending you all tons of love, light, and joy as always. Mwah. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram at Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.